snakes in the water. Kind of leery about walking out here now. There's big old snakes down in here. You getting some water there, buddy? And a big old snake just went that way. So yeah, I don't really like standing here. Hey guys, just me again. Oh, look at this. An obstacle course made for me, huh? Oh, this is already zoomed out. I don't know how that got that way. Oh boy. I'm assuming these are docks. See, I'm not familiar with the waterways down here in the south, but I'm assuming that those are boat docks or something for big boats coming through here. They can tie them to those things, I guess. I don't know. Little hole there. That'd be the scariest thing, wouldn't it? You have to go down a hole like that with a bunch of snakes. There's those bean pods. And yeah, these are kind of a pods. They're definitely, you know, they're hard. I mean, they're not hard as rock, but they're not, I mean, I'm sure there's seeds in there or something. A lot of little berries and things. What'd you find? Got a bone? Got a bone to pick with me, huh? Well, it's a little warmer today. We're not going to have any rain for a little bit. Sun's out, and it's a little warmer out. And I guess the snakes are out too, out on the rock sunbathing, so I'll have to be careful. That was a big old snake. I just saw it was, like I said, I hadn't seen any snakes until just now. But again, they took off quick, get away from me. These snakes, they don't like to mess with humans. They try to get out of your way. As long as you don't stick your hand down inside a hole or something, you know. So, well, how are you guys doing today? I'm doing wonderful. Out for my daily walk, which was semi-sporadic for a few days. I stayed home a few days before all this. Last 3 days I've been walking out here because this is close to where I live. So I can just get out here anytime I feel like just getting in the truck and running over here across the river. I just live on the other side of this river. I don't know how far, much further this road goes. But we're going to find out, I guess. Oh, such a beautiful, beautiful day. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And Little Blue is out here with us today, and Miss Boots is home with the puppies. Huh. I love those butterflies. Huh. There's a bunch of yellow ones up here, flying around, mating or something. Little orange one. bunch of them. The dog walked by and scared them all off. There's a bunch of these. Those are green ones. Wow. That's so beautiful. Oh my goodness, there's just butterflies everywhere. Butterfly, butterfly. Mm. Something digging these big old holes down in here. There's the second one I've seen. That's some kind of big animal dug that hole. Beaver or something. I don't think it'd be a beaver, but like a muskrat or something. I don't know. Huh. I wonder what's down this little road. All these beans. Boy, they just like this area here. And, you know, this is another thing with all this genetically modified stuff and all the chemicals that they spray. We're only being told, well, it doesn't hurt you, you can eat it, you know. Yeah, it just knocks 20 years off your life. But that's, you know. But what they don't tell you is what it's doing to all the wildlife. It's depleting the wildlife. You know, we were talking about these sprays that they spray. They're literally spraying Agent Orange chemicals all over the world. Down there in Texas where they were spraying it and wiping out the whole acreages with airplane dust crop. Dust, what do you call them? Crop dusters. Well, they would fly over the fields, and when they would get to the highway, they'd just keep dumping right on across the highway into the next field. And there were cars, and I ended up going underneath. And, you know, I was like, oh my goodness. I rolled the windows up. Because I thought, it was at that point, I thought, best to just keep driving as fast as you can, get through it. And roll the windows up, right? Turn the air conditioner off. Because I didn't really have time to stop and wait for him to go across. Sit there and linger in the air, you know, so I figured best just go. And I always thought that was just awful. I mean, I've heard people being sued. These crop dusters being sued because they dump all over the fields and there's people living out there. Killed their dogs and stuff. It's really bad. And there's another problem that they're not telling us about. See, they know that there's so many problems that the world's coming to an end. They're not telling us all of them. They're just talking about it as though it's global warming. They don't realize. The average person doesn't realize what that means. But one of the problems they're having, especially I guess around Washington, big city areas, is all the asphalt and all the buildings and all the oil and tar in the roads. And they dump, in some areas like where it's cold, they dump salt all over the road during the winter. And this goes down and into the river, and it increases the salt content, the sodium chloride content, which is deadly to the animals above a certain amount. You're only supposed to have a certain amount of salt in the water. And then it becomes ocean water. You know, it becomes sea level, or sea salty water like the sea, and it kills all the freshwater fish and all the bugs and everything. So this is why people in areas in cities where you're getting tap water, even if they didn't put fluoride in it, it's got quantities of arsenic and other things like boron and stuff that we're not supposed to have very much of that in our food. Probably won't go back into here very much further. Looks like it's a little jungly. There might be some snakes. There's this lady asked me one time if I wanted some snacks. But in her accent, it was snakes. Did I want some snakes? I was like, snakes? No. No, you want some snakes. Oh, snacks. Yeah, let's go back. So it's too much sodium is becoming a big problem for a lot of people because people eat canned food, restaurant food, but guess what? The real problem isn't even the sodium, because we do need sodium. We need quite a bit of sodium chloride. That's a compound. So you need about 2,300 milligrams, they claim. Who knows if they're actually correct on this? I don't think it's a problem, what they're saying. 2,300 milligrams of sodium in your diet every day. And it's definitely necessary, although the pancreas produces sodium. So it may be one of those little things that they're not telling us, that we don't have to get sodium, all of our sodium from the environment. There's almost relatively no sodium whatsoever in food. I've said many times you're not supposed to eat anything that's not food. But there's something else we're supposed to do. We're supposed to drink water. And most people believe that water is just H2O. And this is another big lie. Real water is mineral water, and that means it has mostly potassium, calcium, and all these other minerals, and some sodium. Quite a bit of sodium. There's like 100 milligrams of sodium in your water, in you know, a liter of water or something. I don't know the exact figure. But if you're not drinking mineral water, then you're not getting it. Now you say, yeah, but I dump salt all over my food. Sea salt. Sea salt's good for you. It is. We need a certain amount of this sea salt. Why? Why sea salt? Because we have to understand that the sea has all that salt in it. More than other minerals. There's a lot more sodium and chloride in sea water than there is, say, calcium and potassium. But we don't need that much sodium. Why? Because we're not supposed to drink out of the sea, but we're supposed to drink out of regular fresh water, which still has sodium in the proper amounts. But the problem with it is that sodium is higher on the chemical elemental chart. So it's like number 11. That's pretty high because there's like 100 of them. Sodium, or salt, is sun, the soul. And it's related to the word helium because you put your hand to your head and you say, hail, hello, salute, salvation. That's our salvation. We have to have these minerals. They are the conduit for the energy or the Holy Spirit. So we need the sodium, but it has to be natural sodium and chloride. They come in a compound because they naturally come that way usually. And they're found in all fresh water because as the water runs down through the rocks, it leaches all the minerals from the rocks. But along the way, it goes into the soil. And certain compounds of potassium, potassium chloride and these kinds of things will go in and bind to molecules that make up food. So you'll find it in vegetation. But because the salt or the sodium is a much smaller particle because it's higher on the elemental chart, it doesn't attach itself to these compounds in food very much. There's almost no sodium in food. The highest concentration of sodium would be in foods like roots, like beets. And we're not supposed to eat very many beets and roots. Those the Bible calls roots and leaves medicine. So we can make soups and teas out of them, and if we need minerals that we're lacking, we can get them that way. But on a daily basis, we're supposed to eat food, and there's no salt in the food. No fruits and nuts and things like that have very little salt. But we're supposed to drink water, and there's plenty of sodium in the water, but we're not getting mineral water anymore. And here's the worst problem. Bad enough we don't have enough salt. Because you don't have salt in proportion to potassium, you're done. Well, people are somehow managing because they get lots of salt in the potato chips and things like that for years. We used to put salt all over our meat to preserve it. We used to put salt in our soup and beans, but we don't eat soup and beans anymore. What we do is we get Campbell's soup, and that's not got any salt. They have some sort of chemical that makes, kind of synthetic salt, but these chemicals are harmful. And they will kill you. So, getting you with a 1-2 punch. You don't get any salt, you're getting chemicals. Or you're getting sodium without the compound with chloride and the other types of compounds that are supposed to come in nature. The only way to be safe, to get your balance of food and nutrients, is to drink pure mineral water and eat food that's been grown naturally in the environment with fresh water from the ground where it's not been polluted. And so because of all the pollution, the earth is dying and we're dying. So these chemicals like MSM and stuff like this, or MSG I should say, and BHT, we find all these chemicals and they call them preservatives and things like this. They don't need them. They could use salt, which is what the body needs. But instead, they put some kind of poison in there that's addictive. So you'll get, kind of salts are a little addictive as well, but only to a point. When your body gets enough salt, you're not addicted to it anymore. But these chemicals, they don't have a natural shut-off. You just keep wanting more. So we're being poisoned. Now I did a video about salt a few years back, talking about this. I changed my mind slightly on salt because I didn't understand. I was saying that anything that's a food that can be called a food has to have potassium, but there's almost no salt. So I assumed that since the pancreas could create enough sodium, I didn't know. It's hard to know whether the pancreas creates the sodium out of thin air or whether it has to take the sodium that you put into the body. But I wasn't aware that sodium was so plentiful in the mineral water, and I wasn't thinking about it in that sense, that there are lots of things that we don't get in our food we have to get in the water. Like, for instance, air is mostly gotten by breathing, but we need oxygen. It's a mineral. But even though we can get oxygen from food, and we do get oxygen from food and water, most of the air we breathe is where we get our oxygen. Same thing with things like helium and hydrogen and nitrogen and sodium. They're all up at the top of the chain. Helium's the top, or hydrogen, then helium. And you got other ones in there like lithium, which, by the way, that helps calm your nerves, and mental patients get that. Of course, they overdose them on it. And I don't know, it's probably some synthetic version. And it does damage when in higher doses. But in combination with certain natural compounds and stuff like this, it's important to have. But it only comes in water. So lithium's way up there with helium and hydrogen. And like I say, number 11 is sodium. So it's really small. And you're not supposed to get it. All these, like helium and boron, stuff like that, you get in water in the proper amounts. Unless, of course, there's a chemical factory up the street dumping chemicals into which is happening all over the place. And if you're living in a city, you're getting tap water, which has got not just fluoride, but arsenic, boron, neon, lithium, helium, all these other things that is in the water that is in concentrations in some places it's much too high. So it becomes a poison. We need them in balanced amounts. So this is why you have to get your water from the country out of the stream. So your body cannot get sodium from food in proper amounts. So therefore, you would have to get it from the water. And if you don't have water, you say, well, I could just take some sea salt and sprinkle it on my food. You can do that because sea salt is all the appropriate minerals that you should find in water. That should be in water because those amounts wouldn't be found in food, because I say certain things like sodium wouldn't bind with food elements and compounds because they're too large or too small. So sodium will it won't bind, and it'll go down the stream and go into the ocean, and over thousands of years the ocean builds up salt when it dries out. And so you can go to a desert where there used to be water there, and you'll find salt all over the ground. Sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, that's how they find it. It used to be a big ocean there. It's still same as sea salt, but they call it Himalayan because it's the salt that's remaining. Like Salt Lake, they get sea salt there too. You can buy sea salt from Salt Lake in Utah. But it's just the water that's dried up and all the minerals remain. So if you sprinkle that salt on your food, it's just like getting mineral water in a lot of ways. You can actually put it in your water a little, just a dash. I mean, they say 2,300 milligrams of sodium, 2,300 milligrams of chloride. So when you take table salt, it's sodium chloride. It's about what you need, just about right, half and half. It's actually 60-40, but who's counting? But you don't want too much. So 2,300 milligrams is about a teaspoon of salt. And that's all you're supposed to have a day, a teaspoon. So if you imagine shaking some sea salt over your food, just sprinkling it. And if you do that with every meal, make sure you don't go over about a teaspoon. But also remember, you're going to get some, if you're drinking natural water and you maybe eating beets or something like that, there's quite a bit of sodium in roots like beets. So you're getting more that way. So you don't want too much sodium. But you need a balance of the sodium. So however much potassium you're getting, you have to have the balance. So you need 4,700 milligrams of potassium and 2,300 sodium and 2,300 chloride. So if you put the chloride and the sodium together, that's about 4,600. So it's about even Steven. You need salt and potassium in a perfect balance. So if you were going to dry potassium up into granular, granular form, powder, you'd have a couple of teaspoons of it in a daily allowance. That's how much you'd find in your food and in your mineral water. And so if you're eating So actually that's about 2 teaspoons of salt, table salt, that you could eat, because say table salt is half and half. So you'd have about 1 teaspoon of sodium and 1 teaspoon of chloride, and that would be table salt. So 2 teaspoons. So that's quite a bit. I mean, you can sprinkle quite a bit of salt, Himalayan sea salt on your food, and it's healthy as long as you are eating vegetables. But now, let's say that you're putting salt all over your food, but you're only eating fast foods and drinking alcohol, canned foods, and meats that don't, it's got, you have to put a lot of salt on your meat, and you're not eating vegetables that has potassium. Then you shouldn't eat very much salt at all, right? Because now you've got an imbalance. It's way too much sodium and no potassium. And by the way, when we say potassium, it comes with calcium and all the other things. Nitrogen's up there too, which you don't normally get in your food. You do get nitrogen in beets. Like I said, roots, because it comes from the ground. Leeches, but it doesn't form compounds into the fruit. So that's what the Lord designed us to eat, is the fruit and the nuts. So we wouldn't go eat in our food lots of sodium and nitrogen. We would get that from the soil, the minerals that go into the water when we drink our water. So if we're not drinking mineral water, we got a big problem. And it's a huge problem, because your gut is the place where all disease starts. And people, if you're going to watch Joe Rogan or anybody else, very interesting information, but it's not complete, because all they talk about is the bacteria and the flora and the fauna, and how we need prebiotics and these kinds of things. Nobody's talking about the fact that we need moisture, which is soluble fiber. And when the soluble fiber is full of water, it's holding the water, the moisture in your gut. It's also holding the minerals. And so if you were to drink water that has sodium, it's going to be absorbed in into the soluble fiber that you have in your gut. And that's going to aid digestion. Potassium, the balance of those minerals. I think they use the expression sodium, potassium balance. But really what it is a balance of all the minerals. So the gut has to have those minerals to digest food. And since the sodium is smaller, it goes right into the bloodstream and carries the other minerals and nutrients and energy into the rest of your body. So the wall line of your stomach has to have a lot of the sodium chloride. The potassium, though, is supposed to be in the food. So that when the food reaches the stomach, it reacts with the sodium in your stomach lining. And the sodium also makes a film, a protective film, around your stomach lining, so that the acids don't burn a hole in your gut. So if you don't have enough sodium, you've got a hole in your gut, and that's leaky gut. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about this mechanism of salt and potassium. Most that they'll say is you got to have a balance, and then they'll end it there. They won't explain just how important this is and how it is the root cause, the lack of minerals. Look at all the seeds coming out of there. Oh, this. There's flowers there, isn't there? It's like a little flower. But there's always a fruit beneath the flower, isn't there? These are seeds. The fruit with the seed therein. So this is the problem. Yes, you need nutrients to live. But if you eat food, all the nutrients are supposed to be there. A whole food. So that would be the key to that. If you want nutrients. If you want to have well-being, you must eat whole food. But if you don't drink water, then you're missing the sodium, sodium in the chloride that keeps the barrier in your stomach so that the acids don't break through and give you ulcers, and then ends up ruining your stomach and you can't digest food. It aids in digestion as well and brings certain things like hormones to the places they need to go. And here's another big revelation, guys. And I really hope that if any of you have diabetes, especially type 2, but I think it's true, literally true of any diabetes whatsoever. I know that it is, but it's really effective with diabetes type 2. You can solve that diabetes within a matter of a few days. I promise you. So listen up what I'm saying. And if you know anybody who's got diabetes, let them hear this. Show them this video, because this is the most important thing you'll ever hear. And if you don't believe me, do some research on it. I mean, in depth. Because they're, try and obfuscate this to you if you read books. But read it carefully. Dig deep and you'll find the answers. But the low potassium levels, which means no vegetables in your diet, is what's causing diabetes. The potassium levels, if you have the proper amount with the balance of the sodium and all the other minerals, will not let you. You can't possibly get diabetes. Diabetes is the direct cause of, as we said, hydration. You're not hydrated. You have no soluble fiber in your gut. So the moisture is not in the gut. It's like a dried up river and all the vegetation dies. Everything comes alive when the minerals come in. Lightning comes down, creates nitrogen, sulfur, and then it opens up the soil to bloom, and the other minerals create a channel for the energy flow, and things bloom and grow, and they're alive. And when your body has the moisture, you're alive. It cannot possibly have diabetes, because insulin is a hormone that is synthesized in the body itself and created when you have the proper potassium. And I'm sure it's not only the potassium, it's the measure of potassium in balance, a natural balance with sodium. And this is the mineral, all the minerals that are always the way they ought to be. If you go to a spring in the mountains and you take spring water and you drink it. Now, if you wait till it gets all the way to the ocean, it's way more sodium than there is any other mineral, because sodium is a smaller particle and it doesn't bind with the vegetable matter. It's too small, and it's designed to go down through the rocks and find its way to the ocean. Now, evidently the Lord has made that on purpose that way, because that means that most of these particular kinds of, the higher, the smaller particles like oxygen, nitrogen, boron, lithium, sodium, and chloride, all of this is found in water primarily, not in food. So you have to have the water too. You have to eat the right food and the water. If you don't have both of them, some people say, well, I'm eating really good, but you're not having the water. You're not getting the good water. So it's not going to work. You got only half of the equation. And then if on top of that, and you're not doing any of that, but on top of that, you're going and eating canned food, box food, restaurant food, now they're giving you replacement, synthetic chemicals that do more damage than not having the mineral in the first place. This is what's causing diabetes. So when you were born, and your mother didn't breastfeed you, that's the first strike against you. And that alone will cause you to have an autoimmune deficiency. It'll manifest in many ways, depending on how bad it was for you. Because even if you didn't get breastfed, if you got some milk in your diet, a lot of milk, a lot of people drink milk from the store and they give it to their kids in cereal and stuff. So some kids get milk. But then on top of that, from the time they're little, you're giving them soda, Gatorade, and things that we think is better for you. Well, it's not soda. What is it? Well, it's a cold coffee or something, right? Which is just full of fructose corn syrup. So it's not even sugar, it's fructose corn syrup, which is 10 times more damaging to the liver than sugar, and in higher quantities. And it's from corn that's made genetically modified corn. So it's got these other chemicals that are killing you. We're giving that to the babies and then going to McDonald's and feeding them there almost all the time. Most mothers are working. They don't have time to cook with natural food. You can't even buy natural food anymore. Even if you grow your own garden and you live somewhere near a city, all the water that you're pouring on your garden has got arsenic, fluoride, boron, and crazy chemicals that we're not supposed to be putting in our body. So if you're a young person, you were born into the world in a time when mankind had already turned the corner and all of the cities were poisoning us. If you're born before, say, 1970, you have a lot better chance of having some reserve minerals in your bones and stuff like this. But then again, if you've just been eating poorly for the last 40 years, you probably just about depleted all of those as well. Now you're about to perish. Especially if you were drinking a lot of alcohol, because that dries you up at the cellular level. Not just, dehydrates you. You have the headaches, that's because of dehydration after you drink too much. And a lot of times when you drink, you throw up. And when you throw up, you empty your gut of all the sodium chloride and all the potassium and all the minerals and the stomach acid. And it's hard to rebuild all of that without the minerals. That's how you rebuild the stomach acid, with the potassium and the sodium and those minerals. So if you've been sick and you had to throw up a lot, you better go and make sure you get some mineral waters in great quantities to restore those minerals quickly. But if you didn't do any of this and you were a little child and you've been raised this way, you're going to have diabetes. And they're going to call it 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're born with this problem or you got it later on, it's the same problem. Your gut is ruined. Now, here's the thing. Some people say, well, Dave, but it's impossible. I can't fix it because I can't eat vegetables. I can't digest them. Well, neither can a baby. My puppies couldn't digest food. They had to have milk. It was the only thing they could digest. But about 3 or 4 weeks, the puppies can eat little bits of food, like oatmeal. I fed them some oatmeal, and I started feeding them a little rice and stuff before they ate the dog food, because I don't know what's in that dog food, and I don't even feed my dogs dog food. I make their food. I started doing that because I heard about Purina killing the dogs. And it's not that much trouble, really. But as a human child must have milk for about a year before they're weaned. It takes a while. Humans mature slower than animals. So for the first year, a child needs his mother's milk. And if he doesn't have it, it's not going to be good. Especially after, like I said, you're not even feeding it milk at all. Not even cow's milk. But you're just feeding it sodas and restaurant food. That kid's going to have, from the time it's born, autoimmune deficiencies. So as the child gets older, you have a lot of arthritis as well, because that means that there's no cartilage, there's no sulfur, and all that stuff is important to build up. These minerals build up the bones and all of these things, and calcium. And if you don't have this, where you get this with mineral water and milk, then you're done. So no matter who you are, if you have diabetes, you can repair your gut simply by understanding that, if you eat vegetables today, your body can't digest it, so you get a lot of gas, bloating, and it's very uncomfortable. So what you have to do is only eat a little. So let's say that you ate a whole bowl of beans and you couldn't, it was terrible, you couldn't do that. All right, so just eat 1 spoonful of beans every day. First, repair your gut and let it rest. Just eat oatmeal. Just live on some oatmeal, a little milk, cup of tea, maybe you can take some medicine to build up your potassium levels and things like this, like beet juice. Sprinkle a little sea salt on your food, not too much, so that you get your minerals. And build up the stomach lining and the acid, hydrochloric acid, which is made from these minerals, and build that up to where you can digest food better and then introduce little by little on a steady basis every day, adding something like beans. Now, foods like bananas have a lot of fiber, and you can eat those pretty, right away. They don't have the type of fiber that you can digest pretty well. And I take like an orange. If you are not healthy, don't eat the white part, because that's very hard to digest. But as you get healthier, you can take the orange, take a knife and cut the orange part of the peel, and leave that white rind, or whatever it's called, the white part, on it. But don't do that if you don't have a good digestion, because that white part in the orange is hard to digest. But you still need to get a little in there. If you're an adult, even if you can't digest it, just take a little. And what that does is it goes into your stomach and it sits in it for a while, because it won't digest quickly. But you don't put too much, just a little. And then it harbors the good bacteria, and you begin to develop the good bacteria. Eventually, the body's got to find a way to get rid of this thing, so it starts making the bacteria that you need to start adding more and more of these fibrous foods. So you have to build up your stomach. Now, I admit there could be some scar damage if you had ulcers. But you see, even if, most people today probably got some ulcers. So everybody's dealing with this. We're going to have to live with that. And over time, even the scar tissue will go away. Make sure that you get iodine, because iodine is not found in sea salt. And it's hard to get enough iodine. So sometimes you may need a little iodine supplement, because that helps get rid of a lot of poisons and things that's in your body that you need to get out. So make sure you have a little bit of maybe iodized sea salt. And you can build your gut up, and you will probably could do that within 6 months. I don't know, depending on how bad your gut is. For whatever reason, you don't even know what's wrong with yourself. You just know you're bloated all the time, or you have the runs, or diarrhea sometimes, or constipation other times. You know that you're bloating, you don't feel good, you don't have any energy. It doesn't matter. All of those are just symptoms of the same problem. There's something wrong with your gut. And we know what the solution is. Eat your whole foods with soluble fiber, and not genetically modified ones. Like this is all genetically modified. You say, well, then what do we do, Dave? Because everything you go and buy at the store, genetically modified. Well, I know it's trouble. It's a trouble. But for one, as long as you're eating vegetables, you're probably a lot better off than eating the same vegetables that are ground up and added, chemicals and purposefully, designed to kill you. So if you're going to the store and you're getting bananas, if you can't get organic bananas, well, you got to get some kind of banana. You're going to die for sure. You got to get some kind of apple in your diet, and you got to get some kind of nut. Try to get organic if you can. And if not, what we're going to have to start doing is going out into nature and collecting the actual food. And well away from the cities, because that's where I said all the chemicals are getting leached into the ground. So I would suggest for now, since, we're talking about now, is what we're really talking about. What can we actually do right now with what resources we have available that I know that my listeners have available to them? Because you can go to Walmart or whatever. What's this? What you can do is immediately stop eating all bad chemical foods, poisons, pharma. Everything we've said that's bad, don't do it. Immediately, just stop doing it. If you have to wean yourself off of some of this stuff, well, then wean yourself. Do the best you can. If you fail, start over again, try it again. But get yourself to a place where you're not eating these bad things. And then, if your gut can't digest vegetables and beans and other things that you need, nuts, then you're going to have to stick to milk and butter and oatmeal, and then make your way up to white rice, and just start adding little things as we go and build up. But in order to do that, my suggestion is go get some beet juice. and get you some sea salt. Don't put too much sea salt. We don't need a whole bunch, but we need a balanced amount. The 7 minerals that we have to have, the main minerals that we have to have, is number 1, potassium, 4,700 milligrams. And probably sodium chloride is actually probably next. Even though I haven't been including them in the top 7, because I'm learning that, because I didn't really understand the relationship between drinking the water and having the minerals in the water and why it's not in the actual food. So I do now think that sodium and chloride is probably number 2 and 3. And then we need phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, and let's see, start over again. Potassium, chloride, sodium, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, and probably magnesium. I'm trying to remember from my memory. And those 7 nutrients you need in an abundance in your food or from the water. And you actually need a combination of water and food, real food. The other ones are more or less, they call them trace minerals, but there's some trace minerals you need quite a bit of, like zinc. You need a little iron, a little copper, and things like this. We need all of them, but in their proper amounts. And they're found in their proper amounts in spring water. And if we need to boost the levels real quick, just as a medicine, we can use beet juice, things like that to get it going. Because there's sodium in beet juice as well as potassium. It's kind of balanced. And it has nitrogen in it too, which helps open up those, it's like, you know, when things dry out and then there's a thunderstorm in the summer and lightning hits. Well, that's nitrogen, and it opens up the pathways. So by some chance, I looked down at my phone and it had stopped recording. I didn't know why, but I caught it right when it happened, so I didn't really miss anything that I was saying. I hate that when I'm talking away and things not recording and I just missed a bunch of good stuff that I was, you know, just saying or whatever. But I just talked about, we cut off at nitrogen. So nitrogen is important, but you don't need a lot of it. I mean, you need about 100 milligrams. That's quite a bit, you know. So we might put that in the top 7 rather than the magnesium. I'm kind of changing this around because I wasn't sure. Before, I didn't have sodium and chloride in the top 7. And, you know, when I did that video about, I don't know, a few years ago, a friend of mine, Nancy, made a comment. A lot of you probably have seen her commenting over the years. She's a pretty smart lady, and she said, no, we got to have salt day because it's in the Bible. Jesus said we had to have salt. And I was like, that's pretty true. That's true. He said this, we got to have salt, you know, and if it loses its savor, it's worth nothing. You are the salt of the world. And that's a pretty good point. Salt is something that the world needs, and we're the salt of the world, just like the light of the world. And it's interesting that he would use salt. We're the light of the world, and we're also salt. Is there a connection there? Light is energy, isn't it? And so I've changed my mind, Nancy, and I think that we need more salt than I thought. But and it was due to the fact that I couldn't understand why all the foods that we eat, that we're supposed to eat, don't have salt. But I didn't understand that we're supposed to get it from the water. And I guess because people didn't get enough water in ancient times as well. They used to carry the salt around with them. Put it all over it with a preservative and stuff. And it seasoned their food, and it's been something that mankind's done for thousands of years. So I think it's necessary to take some salt and put it on your food, but very little. Or eat or drink water, a good source of water. And even then, it may be like streams and rivers don't necessarily have a lot of sodium. You could still put a little dash of sodium chloride or salt, preferably, you know, of course, sea salt or Himalayan salt. on your food. That wouldn't hurt you. In fact, it's very good for you, especially if you're going to be adding potassium to your diet because you think you're low in it because you haven't been eating enough vegetables. So make sure while you're doing that. That's why I said, use beet juice, because it has quite a bit of sodium in it. And potassium. It's a real good balance, and you can build yourself up real quick. But I do think a little shaker of sea salt on your food is not going to hurt you, and it's going to help you a lot to develop your stomach acids again so you can digest foods. So yeah, going back to the Bible, there's the Bible always has it right. That's why Jesus said he says the Father gave us eggs, a perfect gift. And he's talking about food, He's talking about eating bread and things. And if you ask for bread, he's not going to give you a stone. And if you ask for an egg, he's not going to give you a serpent. Which is interesting because Yahweh gave them serpents, right, when they asked for bread. So they were always thirsty and they were always hungry. And so there's two things we have to keep in mind. We have to eat, and when we eat, we get certain nutrients. But there's not much salt. We need air, but we don't get enough air from the food. We have to breathe it. We need water. We don't get enough water from the food, so we have to drink it. And in the water is a lot of these other minerals like sodium chloride. So this is why it's important. And this is why sea salt, which is from the ocean, is kind of virtually the same thing as drinking mineral water if you put a little dash of sea salt in your food. So even if you can't find mineral water, make sure you dash some sea salt on your food or in your water. It actually makes the water taste a little better, because sometimes you get water that tastes a little bitter or whatever, a little metallic or something, and you put a little salt in there and it tastes much better. It's a little sweeter. So it's just like, I guess, like sugar. Sugar is not something we should worry about eating all the time. We don't need to eat it. Our body will make sugar. And sugar has a purpose of fattening us up. But back in the day, we used to hibernate, and so therefore we could eat quite a bit of sugar in the summertime, fatten up, and we'd lose all that weight in the winter. So in nature, there's not, we're not supposed to eat primarily sugar foods. Most of the foods... Oh, he got away. Good for you. I'm glad you got away. That spider almost caught you, huh? Little sneaky spider. You sat down beside her. Oh, no, he didn't really make it. He got out, but he's still flaying around down there. You okay, buddy? Oh, what are you? There he is. He had to come out of it, I guess. So, correction, a little bit of correction. Sometimes it's not clear what we're supposed. Well, there's a lot of, I can't see the water because of all these trees. There's a lot of big birds over there. A little mushroom or something. Dog went in there. Well, I'm going to head back this way because it's getting real hot today. And we're getting close to explaining this whole salt issue. You see, I was deficient in sodium myself because I was under the illusion that we didn't need much sodium, and I wasn't understanding the relationship with that and the mineral water, and I wasn't getting the proper water either. So I recently started looking into my troubles and looking into the sodium issue, and did a lot of praying about it, and this is what the Lord is guiding me in my understanding now. And I believe, while we don't always know everything, I think what I'm saying is probably it's funny how these things we've been talking about lately are also important, and they're all necessary, important things. We learned about fiber, potassium. Today, we have to understand that that's not the only thing we have to have. We have to have sodium and chloride. Nobody talks about chloride, but you need that too. And miracles of miracles, that's what's more and the most abundant mineral that's in water, and sea salt, which is plentiful all over the deserts and in the oceans. And for centuries, for some reason, human beings knew that they needed salt. Even cattle, they put salt licks out there for them. They'll die because they're not getting it in the sewage water that they're pouring in these buckets, with all the bacteria-laden infestations that they're giving these cattle. But if you put the sodium in the water, or you give them a salt lick, it improves their health. And it's primarily due, not because our body needs salt as much, as it is due to the fact that our gut needs the salt to digest food. And if you don't digest food properly, you end up with autoimmune deficiencies like diabetes. So if you had diabetes, go get some beet juice. Stop eating sugar completely for a while. And get some beet juice. Well, follow the correct diet, but then get you some beet juice and drink that, and a little sea salt. And make sure that you eat that in a balanced way, and see if your diabetes does not improve very quickly, until you will no longer have to take insulin. I'm not advocating that anyone stops insulin immediately, just because, on faith, you're just going to stop doing it. No. You can definitely hurt yourself bad. I know many people that have died because they didn't take insulin. If your body has to have insulin and you're not making it, then you'll die. So you say, "Oh my goodness, Dave, that's then we should just accept it. We got to take our insulin." Yes, but we have to accept it, just like we know that when we got a cut and it's bleeding, that it's bleeding, and we have to bandage it. But we don't expect it to stay that way. It'll heal. And so we're going to heal our guts too. And when the gut is healed, then diabetes goes away. That's what causes diabetes. Oh, that beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I got to see this one. Come on, little guy. It's land right there somewhere. Here we go. That's a pretty one, huh? Woo! Flew away, I guess. It's over there. Huh. That was pretty. Might see another one. But I've never had diabetes, so I cannot say that I have done it and it worked for me. But I know that some things are just pretty obvious when you look at the facts. I do know that people who had diabetes, especially type 2, have been able to cure it through certain diets. They may not have known the correct diet, but they maybe were doing something that helped. Maybe they did start eating more salt and something there. They didn't know, but they even did it. But you can cure it, but it's best if you know why it's happening and then apply measures to counteract those deficiencies. And we know beyond a doubt, for a fact, we're not telling anybody anything that's not something even the dossiers will tell you, that you do need a balance of potassium and salt and all your minerals. And they will all tell you that mineral water is good for you. See, so all of this is not something that, I'm just springing on you. This is real. And if you look into the potassium diabetes equation, if you're not completely sure I'm right. And look into it, like I said, very, very carefully. Because they don't always come right out with it. Because remember, all these articles are written by big pharma companies, and sometimes they'll try to obfuscate some of these things because they want to continue selling you pills that don't really work. When you're bleeding all the time, you need a bandage, right? Do you want to live with a bandage on all the time? If you're bleeding, you're going to have a bandage. I'm not saying take the bandage off. I'm saying fix the fact that you're anemic. There's a reason. You're deficient in iron. Maybe you have women have iron deficiency because their hormonal problems are all messed up and they're bleeding a lot in their periods, and it makes them deficient. Well, so the issue then is not to ignore it, but to figure out why you're deficient in something that's causing you to be weak and losing the iron levels, or losing and bleeding in that way. You don't have enough certain minerals and nutrients to keep yourself healthy. Oh, I'm not sure where I came. I guess I came this way. So, if let's say that you had this problem, you were anemic and you were a woman and it was caused from menstrual problems. You went to a doctor that said, oh yeah, you're deficient in iron. Here, take an iron pill every day. But never addressed why you're bleeding so much. Would that be good? Would you think that was correct? I mean, it could be a doctor. He just may not be either intelligent enough to know the cause and therefore he's treating the symptoms. Or he may just be ignorant of any of this and just went to school, learn how to give people pills. He doesn't really know what's going on. What we're talking about is the root cause, the reason why people are sick. So everybody's talking, and I was talking a lot about bacteria, prebiotics and probiotics, and the flora in your stomach. And it is very important. But what I didn't understand some time ago was the only reason we don't have the bacteria in our stomach is because we're dried up. We don't have the moisture. And this is caused from no fiber, soluble fiber. So, it's a beautiful day in Alabama. And that is a Fat Jack. Just beautiful. And where I'm standing, it's kind of cool. So I'm going to stand here for a minute because it was hot over there in the sun. A lot of these, for instance, doctors give people high blood pressure pills. What's causing high blood pressure? Too much sodium? You go to eat bags of chips every day? Well, I need the salt, Dave. That's a lot of salt, even if it was just salt. Way too much. But you have to understand most of the salt and look on the back of the package and look at the ingredients. There's a bunch of things in there you've never even heard of before. And I guarantee those are the problem. That's the problem. It's not the salt as much as it is all these chemicals. We didn't have any problem, with salt until recently because people aren't eating vegetables. They don't have enough potassium. And they're getting all these chemicals. Looks like sorghum. It's not. Looks like amaranth, but that's sorghum probably. Probably genetically modified as well. I mean, if it's not, see, the food that's grown in the fields where there's other genetically modified foods, they're getting the same chemicals and they're genetically modifying it by the chemicals anyway. And the soil is contaminated with chemicals. So all the food that you find at the store is genetically modified, everything. And most of the seeds you buy at the store to plant in your garden is genetically modified. And you can only use it 1 year. You can't take those fruits, get the seeds out of them and replant them. They designed it that way, so you have to keep going back and buying the seeds from them. From Monsanto, which is a chemical plant to kill us. It's not a food company, it's a death company. Skull and Bones, parent company. A lot of bright yellow and orange butterflies today, not just those black and blue ones. Here's a little orangey one. Yeah, that's all sorghum. And there's corn in there too. Mixed up, well, a little corn here and there. Look how tall that corn is. I wouldn't doubt it. Sorghum and corn's probably related. Sorghum's probably closer to the original corn. So then you eat meat and you say, well, I don't eat that. Those vegetables they're genetically modified there, Dave. Well, the beef and the pork and the cattle and all the sheep and lambs and everything, they feed them genetically modified chemicals. So it's changing the molecular structure of the fat content, which is saturated fats and stuff. It's killing you that way too. Now the sorghum's turning into the soybeans again. I don't know if they're soybeans or other kind of beans. Probably soybeans, because that's what they usually grow. I mean, they grow a lot more soybeans than other beans. Well, there's a lot of beans in the world. People eat a lot of beans, but you know, it's funny. I don't see a lot of people eating beans anymore. But you know, there's Mexican restaurants that have beans. I grew up on beans. That's all we had. Beans and stew meat. Mom would buy potatoes, carrots, onions. Dad would hunt. And that's about all we ate. It was deer meat, venison, elk meat sometimes. Look at all these leaves. It's raining leaves. I guess it's getting a little dry, huh? Ah, it's pretty. Snowing leaves. It's snowing, it's snowing. And all the trees are growing. Can't wait till fall. Be a little cooler and all the leaves will be orange, red, yellow. That'll be pretty. So pretty. I wonder if there's a lot of flowers in the fall around here. Some places they get several batches of bloomings, not just the spring. Like right here, some of these flowers are starting to bloom right now in the middle of summer, getting towards fall. They bloom at different times. We've got to learn the foods that we can eat. There's certain cactuses that you should be aware of if you live in the desert. Those leaves just bouncing around. Some little spirits just dancing there. You know? A lot of bamboo in there. And I love bamboo. And they're edible too. We're kind of given the impression when growing up, we're told most everything is poison, not to eat it, but it's not true. Really, nothing is poison. There are some things that you're supposed to eat in smaller amounts. Medicines are good for certain things. Everything is good for some purpose, but most of the fruits and things you see are edible. It's roots and leaves that are sometimes have high concentrations of chemicals that aren't good for you. Now, there are very, very few fruits, berries, or nuts or anything that would be poison. You can eat them. Some of them have to be boiled. Even beans, you don't eat them dry. You have to put salt in them and boil them. There's too much lectins in them until they're boiled. They don't recommend that you eat raw potatoes or anything. You should cook them. And I think that nuts can be roasted just fine, and they're good for you that way. And maybe that's why we have salt. You know, salt goes out into the sea, and we gather it up and we sprinkle it on our nuts and put it in the beans. And that's probably a very natural thing to do. I always had salt growing up because we had to have salt in the beans. Salt on the venison, you know, and so I think it's a necessary thing. Well, I'm probably well over an hour or something. I don't know. I haven't been able to see the time because I shut this off, and so I don't know how many minutes I've been. Ooh, something was caught in this juniper. I love juniper trees. Oh, so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, guys, and get back to the truck. If I see something exciting, I'll turn this thing back on and show you. There could be anything from here to the truck that might see a deer or who knows what. So we'll come back if we do, but if not, we'll see you guys tomorrow, and may the Lord bless you. Have a good one.